Well, peace and blessings, and welcome to another edition of King Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Andy King, the show with real views, real news, and real talk, where we cover so many topics, whether it's education, healthcare, economics, spirituality, and so much more. I look forward to you all joining me for more dynamic conversations that happen each and every week. King Talk Tuesdays is streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube every Tuesday at 8 p.m. We also air every Thursday on BronxNet Television Channel 70, as well as Fios Channel 2136. We also are streaming on a number of streaming services, including Roku TV, Amazon Prime, Millennial TV 24, and Clash TV. I encourage all of you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is King Talk Tuesdays Live, as King Talk Tuesdays Live, so you don't miss any episodes. But you can also check your local listings to catch up on any of our previous King Talk Tuesdays throughout the week. I want to thank everyone who has been tuning in and watching King Talk Tuesday, because we started when I was in the council at King Talk Town Hall. Then we attended King Talk Tuesdays, and now we are King Talk Tuesdays, doing it all here live again. And you know what I always say, right? People pay attention to people who participate. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor that King Talk Tuesdays is airing right now. And you can ask a question or leave a comment in our chat on Facebook as well as our YouTube. And you can also email us at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Again, our email address is kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. We're going to come right back on King Talk Tuesday and talk a little about what's happening right after a couple of words from our friends.
Welcome to Therodynamics, where we get you back to life. We offer physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We accept all major insurances. Don't worry about an appointment. At Therodynamics, walk-ins are accepted. We have locations in the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and New Jersey. Our therapists, combined with our cutting-edge technology, will get you back to life. Visit our website at www.therodynamics.com for locations, services, and more.
Revolution of hip hop. Bronx Terminal Market. 610 Exterior Street. Bronx, New York. Tuesday through Sunday. Pull up.
The Golden Era, 1986 through 1990.
Oh, yeah. From our friends at Therodynamics, who are taking care of any of your physical therapy needs, speech therapy needs, any of your mental challenges that you might be having. But you know what it is. If your body is right, your mind is right, everything seems to be all right. So please, if you have any challenges, check out Therodynamics for all your physical therapy needs. And for those who know, hip hop has begun in the borough of the Bronx. This year, coming up the following year, we're getting ready to celebrate 50 years of hip hop. So the revolution is here. It's at the Universal Hip Hop Museum down on Exterior Street. Please go in and check out some of the stories, the history of what it was to be a b-boy, our early DJs, our rappers. And when we talk about the early first one, you can't forget Sha Rock. Sha Rock kicked it all off for our girls. But to Charlie Rock and the rest of them who's going through some health challenges, you want to wish him well. Charlie Rock, stay strong, be strong. And we continue to say prayers with everybody from the hip hop and the rap culture industry. We love you and we thank you. And to Rocky, who is heading up the Hip Hop Museum, thank him for his vision and all those who are doing the work to make sure that we carry on the legacy that educate people about the story of hip hop and music. So with that all being said, there's a lot of things happening in the world, but I just really want to know, oh, yeah, I just really want to know what's going on. There's a lot that's happening that we always discuss this time on King Talk Tuesdays. But we want to let you know that over the past year, King Talk has hosted something called Boys to Men, where we brought a number of brothers in the room, whether it's fraternity brothers, businessmen, spiritual leaders, having a conversation with our young brothers, helping them understand the realities of a 13-year-old and how they transition to be that great 31-year-old man. Yes, life offers trials and tribulations. The formula to manhood has not changed, but we want to make sure that our 13-year-olds turns into great 17-year-olds and productive 25 years old, and great family men at 31 years old. Whatever that looks like for you, but we just want to make sure that you stay successful and you're able to grow old on this planet by making great decisions in your life. With that being said, we did 3 of them all last year. We finished one that ended almost at the initiative about a month ago, and the girls were asking, "Where's ours?" So we are going to be doing a Girls to Women, our first ever Girls to Women conference at the Richard R. Green campus. That's going to be happening on December 17th. That's a Saturday, December 17th at 11 a.m. We put together a dynamic panel of women. We're going to tell you a little bit more about them throughout the show and next week's show. But it's going to be a great conversation with a couple of hundred of our teenage girls. You know, our girls need to know how to be great queens, you know, and taking care of everything on the scene. And our brothers are always looking for a fabulous queen to get it right. So for all our young sisters, we're looking for you to grow older and be able to take care of household, take care of home, but more importantly, be that leader that we know that the good Lord is instilled in your body, in your mind, and in your spirit. So looking forward to that. And speaking of queens, I'm grateful and thankful for my queen, Neva Schillenford King. We are going to be hosting the 12th District Ball. We're bringing it back. The 12th District Ball is going to be coming back on New Year's Day, 7 p.m. at the Eastwood Manor. You can all get your tickets. There's still some available. They are jumping off the shelves, telling you that. You know, people are ready and excited to get back. The colors are green and gold as we celebrate not only the 12th District Ball, but our 12th year wedding anniversary. So please, if you want to be a part, tickets are $120 and tables of $1,200, a table of 10. So please be our guest. Come and join the celebration. And I know all of us got that little bit of green splash in their closet, whether it's that gown or that tuxedo, guys. Get ready because it's a green and gold affair. And lastly, before we bring in our wonderful guest who's joining us tonight, this Thursday, December 1st, you know, we like to kick off the month with great news, good news, but this is one of those things that is something that's going to cause us a day of civil action here in the neighborhood, in the Bronx. Richard R. Green, there's going to be a day of action at Richard R. Green to save our community school, as we've gotten wind that someone is trying to dismantle it and take it over. So there's going to be a rally at 11 a.m. Students and principals and parents and everybody's coming together on this day to save Richard R. Green. I am a graduate of Richard R. Green, but at that moment in time, it was called Oldenville Junior High School. And it's always been a part of the Kings 5 legacy, the Beacon legacy, you know, all the organizations that come together. And the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program started there as well. So between Brothers Keepers and New York Edge, so many of us who do the wonderful work there, we want to make sure that we protect our students, our children, and more importantly, our families and our community. So if your schedule allows, please come out and join us this Thursday, 11 a.m. at Richard R. Green Middle School at 3710 Barnes Avenue. Again, that's 3710 Barnes Avenue at 11 a.m. Well, let's jump into today's conversation. We got a good man that's going to tell us what it's all about from transitioning from the boogie down Bronx to Washington, D.C., a very vocal guy that I've known. I appreciate him tremendously in the city council. We shared some great moments of helping to improve city life for so many New Yorkers. And now he's taking his show on the road. He got on 95 and didn't stop. He crossed the George Washington Bridge and kept on going down. I want to introduce you guys and welcome to the first time to King Talk Tuesdays, but he was on King Talk Town Hall way back when, but he's here joining me from Washington, D.C., my March 12th caucus brother, the Honorable Richie Torres is in the house. Congressmember, welcome to King Talk Tuesdays.
Andy, it's good to see you.
Hey, as I always say, it's good to be seen and not viewed these days. God is good. Well, welcome. We got a number of our viewers who are throwing in chats already. They're just happy that you're here today. They said they love the smile. It said, is he wearing an orange Andy King tie? I said, that's just a March 12th kind of thing going on.
It's a red tie, actually.
Oh, see what happens with television?
it signifies my love for the Bronx.
There you go. All right. Well, welcome. So listen, let's just jump right into it. I know we have you for a minute in time to talk about life as a congress member. You transitioned out from the city council and moved on. So some people just want to know, can you share a little bit about your history as an elected official and your thoughts in transition into Washington, D.C.?
Well, I don't fit into your typical profile of a member of Congress, right? I don't come from a politically connected, deep-pocketed family. I think what I bring to the table is the wisdom of lived experience. I know what it's like to face housing inequality and food inequality. I know what it's like to grow up in poverty, born and raised in the Bronx, raised by a single mother who had to raise three of us on minimum wage, which in the 1990s was $4.25 an hour. And I grew up in public housing, living in conditions of mold and mildew, leaks and lead, without reliable heat and hot water in the winter. And I got my start in politics as a housing organizer. And at age 24, I took the leap of faith and ran for public office. I had no ties to the party establishment. I had no deep pockets, but I spent a whole year doing nothing but knocking on doors. I went into people's homes. I heard their stories. Like you, I ran a grassroots campaign. And I won my first campaign on the strength of door-to-door, face-to-face campaigning, became the youngest elected official in the city of New York, and joined you in the city council. And I served there for 7 years. And then eventually I ran for Congress because I came to realize that there was a limit to what I could do at the city level. One of the issues that I care deeply about is public housing. But most of public housing policy is set at the federal level. And so I came to realize, Washington, D.C. is where the rules are set. It's where the purse strings are held. It's where the direction of the country is largely determined. And if I want to have a systemic impact in improving people's lives, then I have to be in Washington, D.C. because that's where the rules are set. And so I ran for Congress, and against all odds, I won. I'm someone who overcomes improbable odds, to make it to public office.
So you just out of the odds were against you. Were you literally shocked that you won?
I was in a state of shock. I mean, very few people thought I would win. And look, especially given where I came from. 15 years ago, I was a broken man. I had dropped out of college. I found myself struggling with depression and abusing substances. There were moments when I thought of taking my own life because I felt as if everything around me had collapsed. And so I never thought 7 years later, I'd become the youngest elected official in America's largest city. And today I would be standing before you as a United States Congressman. I mean, I'm living testament to the grace of God. Therefore, for the grace of God go I. And, my story is the story of the Bronx. It's a story of struggle, but it's also one of overcoming.
I like that. It's the story of struggle, but the story of overcoming, which we know in today's era, Bronxites do need it. You talked about, your passion for housing. And I remember as a council member, you were one of the housing gurus, trying to build everything you could put somebody in a housing. And we truly appreciate you. We still see your fingerprint on a lot of the development that's happening, and I give credit to you, and I give credit to those who don't work prior to it. One of the things that in this world, people, elected officials come and go, but when there's a path of work that's being done, a lot of times it doesn't always get accomplished during the term of that elected official, and it carries on, but the work still continues, and someone else might take the credit for all the groundwork that you laid out. So I just want to say, because I know you laid a lot of groundwork for not only for the 15th district, but help set the stage for a number of conversations that are happening and stuff that's happening in the Bronx right now today. So kudos to you when it comes to that. But one question did come in. They said, we know your passion is housing. What are some other passions? We talked about New Yorkers' Bronxite struggles. What are some other topics of your concern that you're looking to address?
Yeah, look, for me, there's nothing more important than creating economic opportunity than a job. For me, there's nothing more destructive to society than long-term joblessness. Wherever you have long-term joblessness, you're going to have higher rates of substance abuse and mental illness and violence and poverty. And so the number one priority of the government has to be to create jobs, to create economic opportunity, to ensure that people have enough income to put food on the table and pay their bills and keep their families afloat. For me, it's about health and housing, schools and jobs. It's about safety. I mean, people increasingly feel unsafe in our city. We see innocent people being struck by stray bullets. And that's an issue that we have to address. We have to ensure that we're holding violent criminals accountable and we're keeping them in prison, and we're protecting innocent people who simply want to live their lives freely without fear of violence.
You talked on it, so let's jump into it. Safety is a major concern here, not only just in the city of New York or in the Bronx, but throughout the United States. Now, we know between the NRA and gun laws and gun rights and the freedom to carry this and the freedom to shake that and the freedom to shoot this, talk a little about what you as a Congress member would like to do or can do what a federal government is responsible for doing, for keeping its citizens safe.
There is no substitute for federal standards of gun safety. The United States, among all the industrialized countries in the world, we have the highest rates of gun violence because we have the most guns and because we have the fewest regulations on those guns. And so what we need are federal standards of gun safety. State and local laws can only take us so far. New York State and New York City have the strictest laws in the country. But what good are those laws if guns can easily cross state lines? The majority of guns that are recovered here in New York City are coming from the South, are flowing through the Iron Pipeline and pouring into the streets of New York. And so we need the federal government to play a greater role in cracking down on the Iron Pipeline. In a rational world, every gun would be registered and safely stored. Every gun owner would be trained and licensed, and every gun sale would be subject to a complete and thorough background check. But we don't live in a rational world. We live in a world where the Republican Party has stood in the way of gun safety legislation at every point, even when elementary school students have been murdered in mass shootings. And the only way we can break the epidemic of mass shootings is to legislate gun safety at the federal level. Universal background checks, a ban on assault weapons. It's the least we can do to keep our people safe.
And I appreciate that federal approach that will set the stage for our state. But you said, you can't have one state having one set of laws, another state have another set of laws. And then when it goes across the line, that pipeline, then who's responsible then at that moment in time? Who we hold accountable for that? But I want to transition your question in regards to the legal registered gun. You talked about us possibly, if we were in a sane world, things will operate a lot differently. But since we're operating in an insane world, what are some creative thoughts that you think that can be done to slow down the use of guns or putting guns in people's hands who really don't need them in their hands?
Well, thankfully, we've taken some action. So we have seen an explosion of ghost guns in the streets of New York. And ghost guns disproportionately fall in the hands of young people and have been used against young people. So ghost guns are guns you can go online, you purchase the components of a gun, and then you assemble it, often using a 3D printer. So these are guns that can be manufactured at home. You no longer have to buy a fully functioning gun. You could simply manufacture them at home. The Biden administration recently passed a rule that finally requires these ghost guns to be registered. And so we're going to see fewer of these guns, hopefully, flooding our streets. But it's been a real problem in the Bronx.
I can see that being a problem. I think that one of the biggest problems is even, sometimes you can, I call it information overload. Yeah. Too much information. Yeah. Because a 13-year-old shouldn't need go online and figure out how to put together a gun. Yeah. You're not in a war zone. You're not fighting a war, and whatever war you're fighting in your neighborhood or in your own self-development doesn't require a 9mm, and if that's the case, something else is off, which we do know. So as a Congress member, what are some of the things that you can do in our neighborhood to hold people accountable that shouldn't have a gun? Whether i.e. 14-year-old, an 18-year-old, a dysfunctional 21-year-old, or just somebody who just really doesn't need to have a gun. If you're not a store owner, security guard, bank guard, or law enforcement, what are some of the other things that can be done that you think that can get these guns out of hands? Because I asked the question in this way is that we know if we have all these gun buybacks, the criminals are not turning in their guns. Yeah. So how do we even stop them getting it, or how do we come up with a new plan to get those guns out of those criminals' hands?
Gun control can prevent people from getting these guns. But the question is, why are people using these guns in the first place? Right? If you focus only on the guns, you're treating the symptom. Right? But we have a crisis of young men. Right? There are hundreds of thousands of young men in New York City who don't go to school, who don't have a job, whose only existence is life on the streets. And these young men are vulnerable, are targets for recruitment by gangs. And so we have to have more programs that engage these young people. And this has been your life's work. We need more jobs to employ these young people. We need to create alternatives to gang recruitment, because gangs are the disproportionate drivers of gun violence in our society.
I think you hit it right. So as a Congress member, I know as a city council member, there are programs, we do funding for initiatives, some real boots on the ground. As a Congress member, some people don't understand that the Congress member's job is in Washington. It's not on 149th Street. It's not on Garden Road. It's in Washington. So how do you help people understand or deliver on something, or working in government to make sure what you believe can correct some of the issues that your district is going through, and make it real?
As a congressman, I'm part of the New York delegation. And the role of the New York delegation is to be an advocate, a lobby for the city of New York, to represent the interests of New York City and New York State, to represent the interests of the Bronx. So we bring the funding from Washington, D.C., and then we leave it to state and local government, to state and local legislators, to spend those funds to provide public services. Right? That's the basic relationship between the federal government and the state and local government. Is we get the funding, but then we leave it to the mayor, we leave it to the governor, we leave it to the state and local legislators to spend those dollars to improve people's lives.
And I'm glad you cleared that up, because a lot of people run for office and don't realize what the responsibilities are, or get confused between all the different offices that they are, from Congress to Senate, even Congress and U.S. Senate, according to New York State Senate. Your senator in Congress is different than your state senator in your state, and people can confuse that each and every day. So, but thank you for that clarity. The question did come in, and let me just go over it, because they wanted. Oh well, even though you've been in Congress, talk to them. How long you've been in Congress? They want to know. The question is, how is your transition from the New York City Council to the Congress been?
It's been exciting and challenging at the same time. When you're a member of Congress, you become not only local, but national and international. One day you could be attending a barbecue in your district, and the next day you could be at a hearing questioning the head of the FBI about terrorism in the United States. And then the next day you could be in a foreign country conducting diplomacy. I mean, the role of a congressman has much more variety and much more complexity than the role of a city councilman. And it requires an enormous amount of work and travel, and it can be demanding and draining. But I consider myself to be the luckiest person on earth. For me, there's no greater blessing than to represent the people of the Bronx in Washington, D.C. And even when I leave the Bronx for Washington, D.C., the Bronx never leaves me.
So speaking of going back and forth for the Bronx, how do you manage that scheduling going back and forth? Are you do 2 or 3 days in Washington? And people will want to know, how do you manage that going back and forth? That constituents, if they want to meet with you, because how it works, they can meet with your staff, but they always want to meet the principal. How do you work that?
So it varies depending on the amount of legislation we have to pass. But in the summer, I get to spend the whole summer in the district, attending barbecues, meeting with constituents. During a normal month, 50% of my time is spent in DC and the rest is spent in the district. But the moment I'm done voting in DC, I go on Amtrak and head right back to the Bronx. I believe I have to be visible in the district. Ultimately, you're judged by what you do in the district. And that I'm about to become one of the Congress people for the Northeast Bronx.
Oh yeah, we're getting ready to talk about that. We have a break that we always go through, but before because we want to talk about that, and before we talk about that piece of redistricting, we're going to go into the first piece of the redistricting because we got about 4 minutes before we go into our halftime break. The city council redistricting that happened. Your thoughts before we go into your redistricting. Talk to us. What do you think about it? That was one of the questions that came in.
The city council redistricting was much better than the congressional redistricting. As far as I could tell, the city council district largely kept council district 11, the Northeast Bronx, intact, which is the right thing to do. The Northeast Bronx should have one primary dedicated councilman, and the Northeast Bronx has an excellent council member in Kevin Riley.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So with that being said, we're gonna as everyone knows, we reached the halftime point of King Talk Tuesdays, show with real views, real news, and real talk. And what I always do as a former basketball player, I got to get my stretch on. Make sure the jump shot stays a little full. We get in the gym with the kids. You can't be shooting bricks. You gotta be all right. But we're grateful that we have Congressman Richard Torres here. But this is a part of the show that we do want to ask people. It's been rough for many Americans and just citizens on this globe. Life has been challenging. There's been an illness that's hit the globe. There's been poverty that's been, and economics that have been just taking everybody underneath the ground. But I just ask you all to find that centerpiece for yourself. For me, it's the Most High in Christ. I look for a spiritual high heaven to keep me protected, keep me wise, keep me strong, and understand there's going to be trials and tribulations each and every day. But it's what you do in those moments of trials and tribulations that will define your existence. You can stand through the Most High, or you can fall following some wicked words that get plagued on us each and every day. So I just ask you, those trying times, I got to give prayers and shout out to all the adults who've done what they could do to help our students in the classroom, to all our students who've braved and have gone through something that this generation can only claim, and still trying to make their way through the classrooms. I applaud them all. And so I just say to everyone who lost a grandmother, a husband, a father, a neighbor, let's say a prayer, for our community, our friends, our enemies, our frenemies, just anybody, just to say that we can be better together. And if we can do that, I know the Most High will guide us, lead us, and more importantly, protect you. So please find that center comfort, because I know there's a center comfort in it. The comforter does walk amongst us spiritually, whatever you call him, whether it's Yahweh, Yahushai, Allah, whatever you want to call him, just put your support and your strength. Give it up to a higher power. And you realize that some of the things that you are trying to manage may not seem that difficult when you offer it up in prayer. So again, thank you for joining us again here on King Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Andy King, the show with real views, real news, and real talk. We cover so many type of topics, whether it's education, spirituality, economics, and so much more. So with that all being said, we've been joined by Congressman Richard Torres. Well, we're going to come back on King Talk Tuesday after a message from our good friends from Good Neighbor.
Good Neighbors Community Outreach Agency provides programs that help community residents improve their lives and support their families. Are you in need of food, clothing, employment, or a home? We also provide immigration services and passport renewal.
Hi, I'm Pastor Glad.
And I'm Lady D.
We're here to serve you.
Need help? Ask us.
You can reach us by calling 718-652-3288 or visit us at gncdcny.org.
Hi, Frank Perez here from Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. It's our Durangos Must Go inventory sell-off. Over 145 Dodge Durangos, all trims, all options, all colors, all must go. The all-wheel drive Durango has it all. Style, comfort, cutting-edge technology, and loaded with safety features. Get up to $2,750 bonus cash and even make no payments for 90 days. It's our Durangos Must Go inventory sell-off. Eastchester Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. Paid the least in the East.
Well, welcome, and we want to thank East Chester Jeep for their support and good neighbors who do a lot of work in serving food, just being a spiritual force in our neighborhood. And I want to thank Pastor Peter, Pastor Glad Johnson for holding it down before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. So we are going to go into the second half of King Talk Tuesday. But before we do that, we got a few comments from folks who are tuning in tonight. I got to give a shout out from Cynthia Hayes. Cynthia Hayes coming in from Flint Town, Michigan. We want to thank her for tuning in to King Talk tonight and thank her for her comments of welcoming you and all the way from Flint Town, Michigan. Also, she does add that Flint, Michigan is also dealing with a lot of gun violence as well. So we know you, Congressman, you're going to be dealing with that because your reign not only is in the Boogie Down Bronx, but all across the United States of America. Also, hey, we got here, who's that? Crystal Baker Grant, who wants to give you a shout and says, keep fighting for housing, Congressman. We need more affordable housing. We appreciate you, Crystal Baker. And we got to put this one up. This is from the First Lady. And it says, it's a question to the Congress member. It says, my question for our Congress member, how can the federal government safeguard residents in federal housing, assuring us of real repairs being done, assuring safety and affordability, and at the same time making certain that they are not privatized? By the way, you are now my representative. Congratulations.
Oh, wow. I hope to earn your vote.
Oh, yeah. So that's, we want to just bring us some former people who are tuned in. So we want to thank
I'm impressed that you have a following from Flint, Michigan. That's impressive.
Yeah.
and we should let you know, in DC, we passed the infrastructure bill, which includes funding to replace lead pipes, which was a real crisis in Flint, Michigan. So that's one of the great accomplishments of the 117th Congress.
Well, did you hear that, Sister Hayes? We got some lead pipe removal that's going down, and they're going to be changing those pipes and give you something else that won't bleed into the water or hurt your health or your children's health for that. So kudos for that one, Congressman. I really appreciate that. You know, I got to give a shout out to a young man. He says Skip Clark. Skip Clark is in California. So brother Skip Clark, thank you for tuning in tonight. And I appreciate him. You know, yeah, you looking good too, Skip. And Richie's looking good. We're both looking good. The three of us. The OGs are back.
It's the March 12th secret.
That's right. People don't know. As we jump back into, me and Richie used to crack jokes because him and I were all both born on March 12th. We are the March 12th caucus, and we will stay steady and true, helping and serving. It's a special spiritual keenness that goes on with that, because we just give, serve.
Andy's younger than I am, so.
Yes, can you tell?
During COVID, I had an afro too, so.
You got to make it grow, bro. I know you got it in you, because we all have it in us. Listen, let's get back. There's a question that came in, and they want to know, how do you use your platform to build trust between the community and government?
Look, it's painful for me to admit it, but Pew Research did a study indicating what are the most trusted and least trusted institutions in our society. Do you want to know what the least trusted institution was?
We're all ears on King Talk Tuesdays.
It was the United States Congress.
Wow.
And the most trusted institution, you want to take a guess?
Don't tell me the Department of Education.
It
FBI.
Small business.
Small business. Okay.
Is the most trusted institution in America. And we saw the resilience, the strength of small business during COVID. But for me, the best way for government to earn and maintain the trust of the people is to actually deliver, is to actually solve problems and have people see the results. So, one of the great achievements of the 117th Congress has been the Inflation Reduction Act, which caps the price of insulin at $35 a month for senior citizens on Medicare. So starting in January of 2023, if you're a senior citizen on Medicare, you're going to only have to pay $35 a month for insulin if you pay anything at all. Right. And that's the kind of change that people can feel in their pocketbooks. We passed legislation that finally empowers the federal government for the first time to negotiate more affordable drug prices and to negotiate on behalf of the people against the big pharmaceutical companies. So for me, the best way to build trust is to actually deliver results.
Delivering results. So let's talk more about delivering results. You mentioned something about the pharmaceutical companies. There's been a lot said over the pandemic, how Pfizer, Moderna, and the Johnsons have made billions of dollars. And I've been in rooms where they have accused them of hijacking the federal government in order to get paid. And this way they've been able to give out the serum that they've been giving out. What are your thoughts about how pharmaceuticals companies interact in Washington, D.C.?
Look, there's no question that big pharma. You hold on for 1 second. Into my office. That's Washington D.C. That's January 6th was my third day on the job, so that's big pharma is a powerful force in Washington D.C., but we overcame the power of big pharma. Big pharma was against capping the price of insulin. Big pharma was against empowering the federal government to negotiate more affordable drug prices. So we have shown that it is possible to break the grip that big pharma has on Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm. If you were to
every so often, David does defeat Goliath in Washington D.C.
That's a beautiful thing, because I want to know, and our viewers want to know, how many rocks you've had in your slingshot that have slayed Goliath down in Washington. So other than pharma, what other big conglomerates or lobbyists or business entities that have come in and just say, hey, listen, we got this, and we run this?
Look, frankly, some of the wealthiest people in our society were against the legislation. We're going to invest more resources in the IRS so that the IRS targets the top 1% who are illegally evading their taxes. These are people who owe literally trillions of dollars that could go toward education, could go toward youth programming. These are people who owe trillions of dollars but have failed to pay it.
Wow.
I think the dollar amount is $7 trillion over the course of 10 years. Of unpaid taxes, and largely coming from the top. People at the bottom are paying their taxes, but there are far too many people at the top who are gaming the system, who are evading their taxes, and we're finally going to hold them accountable. I'll give you a statistic that will blow your mind. If you are someone who earns $50,000 a year, is twice as likely to be audited by the IRS as someone who earns more than $1 million a year. So we're changing that. We're going to say, we want you to focus on the people who earn the most and who are gaming the system the most, and ensure that everyone's paying their fair share.
I gotta ask the question, why? Why would the IRS, and this may be something that you privy to be able to answer or just give us your thoughts, why would a federal government system responsible for collecting taxes and making sure that everyone is playing fair would go after the small guy and leave the big guy alone in the room?
Because that's the way the Republicans wrote the law, and we're rewriting the law. So if you're receiving a benefit like the earned income tax credit or the child tax credit, historically you would face more scrutiny from the IRS, but that's going to change.
Okay, well, y'all heard that. Change soon come. Listen, we talked about small businesses being trusted. We know there was something called back in 2020 that the government established to be $24 billion for the Employee Retention Credit Program. Can you talk to us a little bit more how successful that program has been for small businesses throughout the country, or even just in your district? And then we're going to get into your district.
Look, no program is perfect, but the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP program, was established in the midst of an emergency. Right? The economy was collapsing under the weight of COVID-19, a once-in-a-century pandemic, and Congress had to create a program overnight and administer it to millions of small businesses across the country. And my impression is, although far from perfect, there are millions of businesses that would not have survived were it not for the PPP program. Before the PPP program, there were statistics indicating that more than 40% of Black-owned businesses went out of business. More than 30% of Latino-owned businesses went out of business. And once we put the PPP program in place, it saved millions of businesses, millions of jobs across the country.
Okay. Well, we're thankful and grateful for PPP program. I know a lot of businesses did take advantage of it in New York. And we both know, as we were in 2020 in the council together, how some boroughs were struggling, and while others were tapped in right into getting that money, some were struggling just being able to fill out a form, or not just having the reality of manpower or woman power to do the work to get the funding, which, as you just eloquently put some people out of business. Being able to save those, how does federal government bring people back to life, since we trust small businesses so much?
The key is access to capital. Is we know that the people in the Bronx have every bit as much entrepreneurship as any county in America, as the wealthiest counties in America. Right? We have the entrepreneurship, we have the creative energy. What we are lacking is access to capital. Right?
Lacking access to capital, so we're acting. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Continue.
We need access to capital. We need access to loans so that you can build businesses, because it's not enough to have a good idea. You need the resources to translate that idea into actual business.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need is capital to support the growth of small businesses here in the Bronx, especially because we're an entrepreneurial borough. We have people. We're a borough that's heavy on immigrants who have taken the initiative to open businesses, but need access to small business lending, need access to loans.
Mm-hmm. And having that access, you're saying, we more part of the state and city, the local governments, to make sure, because you guys give the funding and it's up for them to actually execute deliverance of these funds, making the path more easier than more difficult for small business or mom and pop shops. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think part of the problem are the big banks. Right? The big banks have an incentive to lend larger loans to larger businesses in order to generate larger profits. So we have to pressure the big banks to provide more lending to the smallest businesses. But then there's also a role for the government to play. So one of the bills that we passed in Congress was the Small Business Credit Initiative. So we set up a $10 billion fund that could be leveraged to generate about $100 billion worth of small business loans for businesses as small as 3 employees, the smallest of small businesses in places like the Bronx. So the program was funded by the federal government, and then we're leaving it to the states to administer it.
Okay. So I would like to connect with your office to have your office connect with King Talk Tuesdays, so we can share some of that information if that money is still available. We do understand that the ERC is still available. There's about $16 billion. I think we're still left in that. But if people don't know about it or how to get to that money, we have a number of stores and small businesses and restaurants with 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 employees who are really struggling just to stay afloat, and the landlord gets the bulk of the rent money, or they're behind in their rent. So being able to tap in this can save. And these are not loans. These are actually grants that they get to keep and just use for their own purposes. Okay, great. We definitely need to get more information about that, so we can share with our viewers on next week's show. But right now, as we always do, we start talking about groups. There's one group that's doing wonderful work with our youth for over the last 17 years. And I know, Richie, you're familiar with them, because we're March 12th and we do what we do. We'll be right back on King Talk Tuesday after a word from the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program.
The Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, YEP, is a youth organization that has served the Northeast Bronx for 17 years. During our tenure, we have provided recreational and educational forums that have nurtured the growth of many youth in the community. YEP has also serviced hundreds of youngsters around New York City. YEP's target audience is youth from the age of 11 to 18, with the goal of helping youth become productive adults. YEP provides young people with resources to explore leadership skills, community involvement, and self-development. YEP consists of weekly and bi-weekly informational sessions with guest speakers from professional, political, and entertainment arenas. Also, as a part of community involvement, YEP will host trips to a variety of venues for educational and recreational experiences. As we continue to partner with other local organizations and serve our community, we will strive to unite and develop the youth in our community. The mission of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program is building mind, body, and community.
If you want your son or your daughter to be a part of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, they can email the number, call the number, which is 718-515-0822, or just email the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. Doing wonderful things, staying strong. When we started 17 years ago, never imagined that I would still be doing the work, but I always thank the Lord twice, because I serve the Most High in Christ to give service to man, and He's allowed me to service His young soldiers and His young souls here on earth. Well, that being said, let's get back to our guests as we come into our last segment here on King Talk Tuesday. We've been blessed today with the Honorable Congress Member Richie Torres out of the Boogie Down Bronx here. We want to welcome him back. And let's talk about your district now. There was a redistricting process that flipped up, switched up, changed up, and it got everybody trying to kind of confused up so we can come together and do what's right. So talk to us a little about what is your district now? That your district is district still 15?
It's District 15.
District 15. Is that the same congressional city council district it was represented? What?
It's like 15 is the magic number.
So talk a little about this redistricting that brought you into further parts of the Bronx. And for the record, you are now my Congress member, just let you know as well.
I didn't realize this. I was.
Yes, you are.
So first of all, I'm honored to have you as a constituent. But second, before the redistricting, the South Bronx historically has been one unified congressional district, and I was the representative of the South Bronx. And the Northeast Bronx historically has been a unified congressional district.
Yes.
Jamal Bowman was the representative for the Northeast Bronx. During the redistricting process, the special master appointed by a Republican judge in upstate New York split both the Northeast Bronx and the South Bronx into three. So the South Bronx is now represented by 3 members of Congress, AOC, Adriano Espaillat, and myself, and the Northeast Bronx is represented by 3 members of Congress, Jamal Bowman, AOC, and myself. So Jamal Bowman represents Wakefield, AOC represents Co-op City and parts of Baychester, and I represent Eastchester and Williamsbridge. So Eastchester Heights, Tilden Towers, Eastchester Gardens, and Gun Hill Houses, and most of the Northeast Bronx south of about 220th Street.
Okay. All right. So
it's about a third. I represent a third of the.
So what do you think about a congressional district that was always whole and now is broken into 3 parts? What is the advantages of a district that was strong as one being broken up, or the disadvantages of it being broken up? What are your thoughts?
Look, you could either look at it half glass, that you could actually look at it either the glass is half empty or half filled. You could say the community's been divided and there are people who have that concerns, or you could take the view that instead of 1, we have 3 members of Congress who are fighting for the Northeast Bronx. And for me, it's a blessing to fight for the Northeast Bronx. It's a blessing to be the representative of the Northeast Bronx, because the people who live there are some of the most civically engaged people you will ever meet anywhere in the country. And I'm excited to be part of it.
Well, I'll be voting. Okay, well, we're glad that have you. We're looking forward to you being engaged with us. I know it is, like I said, it is a transition from the southern tier of the Bronx. I know Jose Serrano had that, for about 30 years, Jose Serrano was in that seat, right? 15 was Congressman Serrano, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I was at an event where then Congressman Serrano announced that he was in his 40th year in public office. And so I then said, I'm on my 30th year on earth.
Well, good. Well, he left you with some shoes to fill, and I'm glad we were able to give you a pair of socks here in the North Bronx as well. Listen, we got a quote here. I got to read it off. It's from a question from I think her name is Artesia Bowman, and she wants to ask the question of Congressman Matoris: how are you planning to build coalitions with other parties? In other words, she wants, how do you feel about bipartisan?
Look, I'm in favor of bipartisanship. If you and I agree only 1% of the time, then we should collaborate 1% of the time for the good of the country and in the service of solving problems. For me, I don't take politics personally. Like, I try to collaborate wherever possible. I have my beliefs, and I'm going to stand by those beliefs, and I'm going to defend those beliefs. But whenever there's an opportunity for you and I to work together, I'm going to pursue it, because that's what the country needs. The country needs us to come together. The country needs us to solve problems.
Do you feel that since you've been in Washington that it's more of a tug of war, or more of, hey, here's some honey and tea and we can make this work?
Both. So, I mean, January 6th, we set the tone of Washington, D.C. Right? The partisanship became much more poisonous in the immediate aftermath of January 6th. Mm-hmm. Despite January 6th, a powerful case could be made that we have had the most bipartisan Congress in recent history. I mean, we passed an infrastructure bill on a bipartisan basis, a veteran health care bill on a bipartisan basis, a scientific research and development bill on a bipartisan basis, a gun safety bill on a bipartisan basis. So we've seen a level of bipartisanship in the last 2 years that would have been unthinkable in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, which shows that progress is possible.
Well, we're glad to hear that progress is possible as we start to wrap up show. Give us your thoughts. Hakeem the Dream Jeffries.
Look,
that's all I'm going to say. Talk.
Look, we are on the verge of selecting the first person of color to lead the House Democratic Caucus. And his name is Hakeem Jeffries. He's one of the most dynamic, charismatic, talented public servants in the country. And he's going to be a powerful face and voice for the Democratic Party. He's only 52, which is young in Congress, because the average age is like 70. And he represents the next generation of leadership in Congress, in the Democratic Party. And he is poised to eventually become the first African-American speaker, the first speaker of color in the history of the United States. He is representative of America as a multiracial democracy.
Well, Congressman, I think we're going to end it there. If there's 1-2 words that you want to give to our viewers, what would you share?
Be grateful.
I love that. Be grateful. Well, thank you. We appreciate you for being tonight's guest on King Talk Tuesday, the show with real views, real news, and you definitely gave us some real talk. We hope we're going to keep the doors open for you. We hope that you can be in the district on Thursday. If not, we still want to let you know what's going on at Richard Green Middle School and so many other things that we have planned here in the North Bronx section of the Bronx. So again, keep up the wonderful work, my March 12 caucus brother.
Always a pleasure, the Bronx. Yes.
Until next time, God bless you and be well. But as we always do on King Talk Tuesdays, we end every show with the scripture. And tonight's scripture reads from Romans 12, verses 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye be present, your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and not be confronted to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. If no one told you today, God loves you, and so do I. Your friend, your brother, and your neighbor, Andy King. Peace.